Hi, I'm Teresa Greco, the host of the Happy Hour. We're on the show. We talk about the things that can help us to live our happiest lives physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Today on the guest, I have an amazing friend of mine named Shawn Marshall. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Super. Always grateful to spend time with you, Teresa. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Shawn, why don't you tell everybody about how awesome you are?
Yeah, I'll just give a brief intro, and they can decide if I'm awesome or not. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I'm a former military navigator I was a navigator in the U.S. Navy, and then I've been an entrepreneur since I got out in '03, so 23 years at this point. And I'm currently running a coaching company. I've been in the coaching space for almost 20 years, leadership and ontological coaching. And ultimately, I help high performers or people who are living really good lives make really big transitions in their life. Mostly, I run a 12-month small group coaching program called Inner Game Mastery, but I also take a few private clients outside of that. So that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, awesome. So I can't wait to talk about with you. So kind of the show is based on in like two parts. The first part we talk about the things that might be impeding our happiness, the things that maybe are stopping us from living our happiest lives. And that, is very broad, right? Because it can include so many different areas. And then the second part is where we then start to transition into like what are the solutions? And so I'm very interested if you could tell us a little bit more about the clientele that you work with so that we can get
Sure.
an idea as to the issues that you help them to overcome.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like 30% of my clients are that mid 35 range, right? Maybe late 20s, mid 30s. They're all entrepreneurs. Some of them are just getting a business off the ground, but some are already doing really well in a business. Um, and they're typically going through some kind of a transition. One of them just closed a business that him and his best friends opened and built this amazing branding. It was a nightclub, very successful nightclub in the city that they live in, and they closed it last year. And so it's a massive, you could say, identity shift. It's always an identity shift in my world anyway, but it's a physical shift from nightclub owner to they're starting a new business now, and they have a phenomenal idea, more in the digital age. So, but there's this shift of transitioning and creating a new identity. Um, and then I have like 70% of the clients they tend to be 50 to 70 in that age
Mm.
range, and they've lived. Most of them are entrepreneurial as well. I helped a couple last year, a husband and wife couple. I worked with them independently, so they were working on their own stuff. But one of the things together that we worked on was actually selling their business. And then the wife went on and wanted to run a political career. So I helped her. There's a whole bunch of physical things you have to do that, but I helped her make that transition over to politics. She didn't get elected, but we ran a freaking awesome campaign, and then she started a podcast. And so I've helped her shift into starting and launching a podcast, and she's in interviewing influences in her city and wanting to make a difference. So it's people like that. I have another woman that's actually in politics as well, and but politics was kind of a hiding place for her, a way to check out from some of the stuff she was going through in life. So she was going through transitions. Could be, I try not to just say too specific about a specific person, but sometimes they're going through pretty gnarly divorces. So I help them get through that
Mm.
process and like really reconnect to who they are and their own values and their own vision. So one of them I helped go through a really radical divorce last year, and then she's launching a new career right now. So that give you
Mhm.
kind of an idea
Yeah,
for who
yeah,
they
and
are. Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting to me because as you speak of their stories, I think, well, it looks like they got it all together. right?
Yeah.
Like, wow, they're a politician, they're launching this and they've sold a business, and it sounds like they're doing all the right things. So what would make them want to think that they needed to work with somebody like you? Like, what makes somebody think, well, maybe I should contact a life coach when everything looks like they have it all together?
Yeah. Yeah. It usually, they're usually not seeking a coach per se, but they come across my work in some way. And then they follow. I write every single day. I've been writing every day for 5 years. And so they start reading my emails, and then they either like what I have to say or they don't. But if they do, they stay, they listen, they read. And then when they get to a point where they're going through something that the tools and methodologies that have worked for them in the past, they stop working, I'm kind of already positioned in a way, in their mind, in their heart, and then they'll reach out. But typically what's going on for them at that point is, I talk about life in domains, like spiritual domain, money domain, career domain, relationship, etc. So typically one or two of those of the domains in their life are not working. So they
Mhm.
may be making money, they but they're way off track on their health, and it's
Mhm.
something that now it's starting to impact them. Or something happened like infidelity. I've had someone come to me for infidelity, in a long multi-decade long, very happy marriage, and infidelity rocked this person's entire world and took this person's focus off of their career, and really just hijacked their focus. So typically something like that will happen, that hijacks their focus, and suddenly the things that they were doing and the way they were operating, it's not working anymore.
Mhm, mhm. Now, if we had to think about the different decades, because you mentioned, many of the people are around 35 or so, but then you have another large group of people that are in their 50s and to 70s that are also seeking some assistance. So you must have noticed some trends in the like evolution of our lives, that as we continue to accomplish more things and acquire more things and learn more about ourselves in that process, you think again that somebody in their 50s and 70s would know so much, right? They have so much knowledge and wisdom and experience that they've gathered. What is it at that point? Because you said you have a large group of people in that particular demographic. What is it at that point in our life that maybe isn't on track the way that it should be? And again, they come to you looking for help.
Yeah, you know what I find, like the common thread, I think, with 50s, 60s, 70s is they tend to have an urgency that the younger folks don't have.
Mm.
And it's not to be confused, because my younger clients, that the late 20s, early mid 30s, they're ambitious, right? They have ambition, but they don't understand at the same level that maybe someone in their 65, 70 who has lost a parent, maybe both parents, or parents are maybe declining in health, or they've lost a bunch of friends, or their mobility and health isn't the same that it was when they were in their mid 30s. There's an urgency that comes with that like, holy crap, I'm all of a sudden 75. My newest client is 73, and she's an
Wow.
absolute flippin' rock star.
Mhm.
But there's an urgency to her, and she has a high standard of herself, and she's also not living up fully to that high standard. And this is a phrase you and your viewers have probably heard a million times, and she actually used it with me when we spoke the first time. She said, I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. And she said that to
Mm.
me, and I was like, wow, wow, that's great. I stopped using that phrase because it's so overused, but it's like it's a powerful realization where you have like the conceptual tools and knowledge to make changes in your life,
Mhm.
but then you don't do it. And there's that
Mhm.
gap between the two, and that's where they find themselves. Like, conceptually, they know how to transform their life,
Mhm.
but they're not doing it. There's something in their blind spot that they're not present to, and that's where getting support is important for them. And then there's that
Mhm.
urgency factor that they're willing to invest money in themselves, because they know to some degree time is short.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. That the time is like ticking when you're on like the second half of life, and now with just all the various health challenges and whatnot, it's almost like life feels more unpredictable on the health side. And so I think it's interesting how you have clients that are in that half in their life that you think, well, they should be wrapping up. Like, I'm like, well, 65, shouldn't you be retiring and thinking about, how you want to spend your days in a lazily way, like reading and golfing and now being able to like have all that time for you instead of thinking of all the things that she has yet to achieve. Like, isn't it? I almost feel like when you said she's not holding herself to high standard, I'm just like, at that point, I don't know if I want to be holding myself to like a really high standard that I feel like I've been holding myself to a high standard my entire life. And at that point, when the standard maybe could be loosened a little bit because you're more secure in who you are, you've accomplished so many things, and who gives a shit?
Yeah.
And how that standard that oftentimes we've adopted from external criteria, it's not even like an necessarily like to say it's an internal one, but the things that we hold ourselves accountable to are often ones that we've adopted from the external, right? That, oh, you need this much money and you need this, this type of house and you need 2 cars in the driveway and you need these clothes and you need like, it's like all that standard is all from the outside rather than maybe ones that we believe are true for ourselves. And so, why is it that, is it because we're living longer that we have people that are older but are still trying to achieve particular things in their life?
I was saying we got to get Gary Brecka here to talk about the longevity aspect because I was in the health industry for a long time. I'm not anymore, but so there's probably something to that. When I say standards, I get what you're saying about, the external standards, but I want to clarify there. My clients are holding themselves to an internal standard. It's internal. They're typically, not always though, not always, but they're typically secure in who they are. And I should say maybe 50-50. So there's some inner work that needs to be done around accepting who they are and owning who they are. But the standard, like at least in the case with the woman I just brought on last week, that's in her 70s, she's got a standard for keeping her word to herself, for taking care of her health in a specific way, for eating in a certain way, things of that nature. Those are the standards where she's, saying, I'm not living in accordance with my own standards. It's like my own standards and my own values for how I want to live my life. I think there's probably a lot of people, to your point, that maybe they are wrapping up in their 70s but come on. I mean, I think wrapping up is in large part conditioning because I know guys, and I'm not women, so it's probably women, but I know guys that have retired already from the military, guys that I was in with, that, if you go in the military right out of high school, you're set to retire at 39 years old, which is insane. But if you take a look at certain professions like the police department, when those guys retire, statistically, their life ends not that long after retirement because they run out of purpose. They're not doing anything. So I think this whole idea around wrapping up, and I don't know, there's probably something to like from a spiritual perspective of like, it's time to wrap it up. I'm ready to go. I do hear that from, um, I had a client whose mom just passed away over the weekend, and I have another client whose mom passed away recently, and I have another client, her mom is not doing well right now, and so I hear, and I have a few clients who worked in hospice, and I've interviewed hospice workers. So one of the things that I've heard from people as they're dying, if you will, is like internally they're ready to go. They are wrapping up at that point. I think there's a spiritual time in life where we do start to wrap it up. But I also think the idea of like even being, I don't know, 70 and still full of life, it's not time to wrap it up yet. I don't know. I think that's largely conditioning from my perspective.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And because I don't resonate with that, I have so
Yeah.
much that I want to do and accomplish. Like it's like my father.
You are so ambitious. Sorry to interrupt you, but you are one of the most ambitious women I know. It's inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. But
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot. But my father, who's 78, still works every single day. And his life is going to end one day where he just, when he gets up, maybe he'll have a heart attack and he'll just collapse. And he didn't go to work that day. And that's how people are going to know that like something happened, because my father he's a workaholic, but in his mind he has all these things that he wants to do and accomplish even though he's 78. And me, I'm the same thing. I have so many things that I want to do and accomplish that on a soul level, I think that we have all of these things pre-programmed before we come, right? It's like, okay, you're going to do this and this and this, and these are all the things that you're going to learn, and these are, how you're going to evolve through that process, how you're going to grow. And so on the inside, I have so much enthusiasm and joy for all the things that I have yet to achieve, that there's no way that I would be, in that group around 65 saying, okay, now, it's all done, and I'm just going to put my feet up and do nothing. Because you're
Yeah.
right. Statistically, oftentimes when people have worked like even up to 65 or 70 and then all of a sudden retire to do nothing, that their life does end very shortly after, which is so tragic, because we say things like, once I retire, then I'll be able to use this money that I have in the bank that I've accumulated to be
Sure.
able to go and travel and see the world and all these other things. But then yet, because we haven't achieved that balance in our life, as you said, you have clients where particular areas in their life are suffering, like their health. And now all of a sudden they're not able to take those trips and vacations the way they had hoped that they could, or they can't do, some of their hobbies, like golfing, for example, that, they may have enjoyed but didn't make time for. And now all of a sudden, their back is no good or their knees are no good because of, the different strain that they may have endured because of their work and whatnot. So I totally understand where you're coming from there, and I think that this is an important message for people also to hear, that, as you said, the conditioning part, that we don't have to necessarily think that that's what we need to do. So I think your clients and the people that you are working with give us hope that we can continue to aspire and have goals for ourselves even as we age, which I think is really nice. And so would you say that the people that you work with are happy?
I would say so. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But after they work with you, or they come to you already feeling quite happy?
Yeah. There's usually a discontent, you know. So maybe in that moment, maybe not. Sometimes they come to me in a breakdown, like a total breakdown, like the infidelity. A client that had an infidelity, and it's a really weird way it happened. It's not the traditional way that you think of infidelity. Thank you, 23 and me. I'll just kind of plant that seed to also keep privacy for her. But she was happy. And then this news comes that her life partner, wasn't honest. And suddenly, her world was rocked upside down, almost, like a snow globe getting flipped. She wasn't happy at that point. Um, I've had clients that I had several, I think I had 3 clients that came to me during the pandemic that they were living great lives. They worked in the hospital system. One was an executive for a corporation in Canada, and they got those vaccine mandates. And these 3 clients, 2 of them were 20 years in their career, and one was 40 years in her career. And they got, mandated take a vaccine, and they said no. It's like, I can't do that. It's not aligned for me. Their world got turned upside down as well. because they lost their jobs, they lost their careers. And so then they weren't happy, right? They entered a state, where they suddenly weren't happy.
Mhm.
I could say there's another avatar of client that I have, and I see this quite often as well, where they get married, maybe mid 20s, early 30s, and slowly in their marriage they start to disconnect from their significant other, from their spouse. The two of them get disconnected, something's off. And then that, if they don't address it, this is like a 20-year mark. That's tends to be when they come to me, they're not happy. And it's been quite a long time. And even things are working. If you looked at their life, the career's working, they have beautiful, awesome children, they're typically healthy, but there's this massive disconnect in their marriage. And like that is so big that they're not happy. And which kind of comes back to what you said earlier, that maybe on the surface, things look great. The neighbors probably see them and think like things are great, but internally, that disconnect from their person that they said I do, is so big that they're no longer happy.
Mhm. And so when I listen to you talk about these individuals, I think, oh my goodness. So, what is it? What is it that comes up? What is it inside of the relationships or inside the individual that these situations tend to bring up other emotions, or maybe, past trauma all of a sudden gets triggered because these situations have all of a sudden come up. And so how do you dive into that to say, yeah, I'm sure many people listening are saying, yeah, that's me, check. Yeah, that's me, check, both on the positive side and maybe on the negative side too, that they're also living in relationships that we know during COVID and the pandemic, many more relationships were strained, not only because of, work mandates, but also just because, you're now stuck at home with your kids and your partner who you're not usually forced to stay around and stick around with as much as many people did. And so
Sure.
a lot of relationships were taxed during that time too. And so how do you figure out what the underlying issue or cause might be? Do you find that it could be trauma, or what do you tend to see?
Yeah, I do. I'm not going to call myself a trauma expert, but my training did include, like, there was a lot of trauma that got surfaced. Again, I don't want to say I'm a trauma expert, but I do find in some cases that there was trauma, that something happened, or something happened. There was maybe some event that happened at some point in their life that they haven't addressed. They buried it, and not realizing the consequence of burying something that needs attention, and then the emotions that are attached to that, and thinking that, um, I don't want to blame them for not handling their emotions. I think there's some aspect of our culture and society that doesn't train us or teach us how to in a healthy way express our emotions. So a lot of people, men and women,
Mhm.
suppress and just move on. Let's just go. And that causes something later. There's a consequence to that later. So I can share, the one example that comes up to me that I'm thinking about of a client. Young woman, ambitious, free, wild, partier, traveler, hiker, like, I'm gonna do it my way. Uh, he found a boyfriend. They lived here in Colorado. I'm in Colorado at the time of this, and then got married. And her husband said to her one day, "I'm moving to Arizona, and you can come with me or not." It was like that type of energy at the first couple years in their marriage. And that did something for her, where she kind of gave her power away. She felt she went from strong, ambitious leader to weak. She gave her power away and said, "Oh shit," she got very fearful and what the hell, and didn't have like an adult conversation about it, and just went. She just went with him. And that act of giving her power away I want to say to her husband, but really to herself, because she wasn't being true to herself in making that move. She didn't want to leave Colorado. In doing that, she took a position of powerless. And that created a disconnect, like the very beginning of it, that grew and grew and grew and grew. And when I met her, it was 18 years that they had been married, and they were completely disconnected. And as we're doing this work, I'm noticing that a trend of where would give her power away to her husband, like current day. And so I did want to know, where did this come from? When did this start? And we figured it out. We figured, like, the moment she left, that made that decision to leave Colorado, she sold out on herself, gave her power away, made up a story in her mind that whatever she made up, I'm not powerful enough, I don't have a decision in this, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whatever fears were attached to that, I'm going to be alone. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we had to go back. And then there were a sequence of events that happened along the way that played out in her mind, that she didn't have power. And that was something that was showing up throughout her life. So we did have to spend some time going back and, like, figuring out, I call it the responsible version, but let's find the responsible version where you actually did have agency, where you actually were at choice when you think you weren't. And in determining that, it's not easy to do. It's not sexy. It doesn't feel good. But when you can, like, be honest and say, wow, I gave my power away. I was fearful and I chose to go and I didn't want to go. You actually get your power back by doing that. So we did that with that decision in her life, and a number of decisions. And then, like, with time, she was able to step back in and, like, kind of refine her voice, claim her power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great story. And so now if we transition to the solutions, right? So as you mentioned early that you have, is it a 12-month group coaching program that you take people through?
Yeah.
And what are some of them? So if we think about, now that we've discussed some of the clients that you work with, some of the issues that people tend to come to you with, maybe you could explain what the 12-month program, how you've outlined it, and why you feel like it's all encompassing to be able to address the issues of the clients that come to you. And then maybe if you could share what some of those tools might include in the program that could maybe address some of the issues that we've talked about on the show today.
Sure. Yeah. I won't give, like, the full outline, because some of the words I use won't make sense and they're not sexy. Like, the word honesty is one of the modules that we do. And, like, everybody thinks they're honest. We all do. But I have a definition of honesty that when you hear the definition, it makes you stop and think, like, I am honest. I'm an honest person. I think I'm an honest person. But honesty to me is more about alignment with thoughts, words, actions, values, vision, interpretations, etc. So I'm just giving the honesty as one example, that in order to land the message of the entire outline, I wouldn't be able to land it for each component of the work that we do. But I will say it's vision based. What I find with my clients is they typically don't have a clear enough vision for the life that they want to live. Big picture for their entire life, and then mission wise, like, let's say what aspect of that vision are you bringing to life in this year? So we always start there with vision, and I help them map out a very clear, powerful vision. From my perspective, the biggest vision is a vision that is not going to be created in this lifetime. Like, that's a vision to me. Like, I want to shift culture, or I want to shift the way that we treat each other or behave or show up, that we show up with purpose and we're not showing up waiting for retirement. Like, that would be a cultural shift that I'd like to create. To me, I'm not going to create that in my lifetime. That's a vision. So I help them. We start there by creating a clear vision. I do help them create a vision statement for themselves to live, that they can revert back to and tune in with. Oh yeah, here's my vision. Oh yeah, this is what I'm up to today. Because let's be honest, we don't always get out of bed in the morning, right, connected to that vision. So I help them do that. And then we do set tangible goals for the end of the year. And then we get to work. I have a whole process, a series of 12 plus modules that we go through, and we do deep work to get into the inner wiring of, where they're living from and how they're operating, and then tweaking that wiring so that it fits with the vision and the person that they want to become.
Mm-hmm. And so, could you give us, because I know you and I've been on some of your events, and you've
Yeah.
talked about some of the different lessons that have come up, as I was sharing different things on some of your events. And I remember that there was a powerful lesson one day that you shared about when you get people to put their phones away
Mm.
for, I don't know if it's a day or a week, I can't remember, but you were saying about how, people they're so glued to that and they're not present in their life. And so I don't know if that's like one of the modules that's part of this program, but if you want to maybe speak to like how important it is for us to be present in our lives instead of being so outward focused and being pulled away from being present to ourselves and how we're feeling, being very mindful in every moment. And so I don't know if you could just talk to that a little bit. I don't know if it's still part of it, but I just thought that was a really powerful message that time.
Yeah, it is. It is thank you. It is a powerful way of being. Presence is a powerful way of being. It is still part of my program. And I'll kind of layer in a few different ways of being typically with presence. One thing I find with I'll own it for myself and with my clients, when they're going through some big transition in their life, big or small, whether it's conflict, whether they're changing careers, whether there's something going on with their mother-in-law and they're not getting along, what do we typically do? We resist. Resistance. So this is something I coach into. We spend a significant amount of time coaching into resistance. And if you're not present, or if you're resisting, you're not present. Right? So one of the things that's absolutely going to block your happiness. So resisting what? Resisting what's happening politically, culturally, resisting, that's the broader scale, resisting what's happening maybe however you would interpret this, because the way I interpret it, that Patrick Bet David coined this term, but I agree with it. The future looks bright. I think the future looks bright, but depending on what's happening in your life and who you're listening to or what you're listening to, you may think economically it doesn't, which means you're resisting. There's a resistance to what's happening. Or perhaps the way your husband or your wife shows up or treats you, you may resist. I don't like the way that he does that. I don't like the way that she does that, blah, blah, blah. The resistance is extremely deep, extremely common, and is a very, very great blueprint for living in your own hell.
Mm-hmm.
If and when you resist. So this is a big component. We do a lot of work around resistance, and it comes up in like the most sneaky ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to layer that in with resistance, or excuse me, with presence. I want to also layer in most people maybe would call it agency. I call it responsibility. Some people call it radical ownership, radical responsibility, or extreme ownership. However you want to phrase that, there's a gentleman named Werner Earnhardt who coined 4 levels of responsibility. The highest level being, and Teresa, there's absolutely no way I can land this on this call, but I'm going to say it. Let your users play with this however they want. It's a very powerful position. I'm not saying this as a truth. I'm saying it as a position. I'm responsible for everything. Man, if I can get that into my bones that I'm responsible for everything, I cannot be a victim to any circumstance, any outcome, any person. It gives me total agency to look at whatever's happening in my life with others, whether it's internal, external, whatever, and come back to a question of, okay, now what? What am I going to do about this? And get out of resistance into like back into some kind of movement. I want to put those two. So that's resistance, responsibility, and then presence. Culturally and where we're at technologically, I know you're very advanced with technology and you know probably better than anyone, but these algorithms, it's like there's this competition for our attention. We've almost, if we're not careful, we're going to completely give ownership to our attention away, right? Because the app is going off all the time, the notification, the 15, 20, 30-second video, we're swiping and scrolling and training ourselves to not be present. So there's already a scary thing I think that's happening there. With that, when something's happening in your life, whether it's traumatic or whether it's challenging, you're changing a career or husband, wife is acting in a certain way, or your relationship's going in a way that's not aligned with how you want it to be. If you don't have the tools, it's very, very, very easy. Even if you have the tools, it's very easy to check out, not deal with it, and do something else. And then that something else is an infinite number of things. It could be jumping on the phone, scroll, and now I'm disconnected from what I really need, what's really happening in here. Or it could be food. Let me overeat, stuff these emotions with food or substances or alcohol or whatever it may be. And what I notice from clients and myself, the farther that like discontent gets, then the easier it is that you want to go disconnect and stay, unplugged and just letting the things go that really need your attention. So to kind of give that backstory, that's how we get to the presence exercise that you brought up that I do with my clients. And it comes at a point in the course. We've been together for like 6 months. We've done a ton of deep work at this point. And then I bring this exercise out and I do ask them to essentially a presence exercise for several weeks where there's no multitasking at all. Nowhere in your life. And I encourage anyone to try this. Meaning when you brush your teeth, you're in the mirror with yourself, brushing your teeth. You're not walking around the house, closing the blinds, putting the laundry, just you, your beautiful self, your beautiful teeth, and just brush your teeth. When you drive, just you, the car, and the road, nothing else. No music, no podcast, nothing. Just in the moment. When you eat, just you and your food. Eating is one of the most intimate things that we do, right? It sounds funny, but you're taking a substance and you're putting it into an orifice, a hole that leads into your body. Like what more, right? Sex and food, eating, like they're on the same level in terms of intimacy. It's intimate. Yet you see people, I've done this myself when I ran my fitness company in San Diego. I used to eat food in my car, driving down the freaking freeway, eating. I still see it all the time. People stuffing their face while they're eating. Like all of that creates disconnect in your life. It takes you out of your game. It gets you out of your heart. It gets you out of your lane. You're reactive, you're stressed, you're doing all these things. You drive to work, you don't even remember the drive. The whole day goes by, you don't remember the day because you've been we're all over the place. And then you leave work and it's just like all nonstop. So I take them through a cleanse of multitasking. It's a multitasking cleanse. I've never used that language before, but that's what it is. And no working out with music, no podcast while you just be with your flipping weights, your body, and experience it. It's an awesome exercise. I do it with them every time because I catch myself going back and getting on my phone. It's like such a slippery slope, that for me anyway. They tend to have a really difficult time with it the first week. A lot of resistance comes up. They tend to get emotional about it in some way. Sometimes they get angry. what the fuck, sorry for cussing if that's not cool, but what the hell, I can't, there's no way I could possibly, rah, rah, rah. It's like, I know, not in the context and the framework that you've created for your life. You're right. You don't have it figured out to where you can just brush your teeth. Which means you're not free.
Mm-hmm.
You have to multitask while you eat, you're not free. You're not free.
No.
And it's hard for them. So they have a difficult time. And after about a week, we come back and talk about it. Most of the time, they didn't go all the way with it the first week. So we do it again. Second week is a lot more smooth typically. And then we see where they're at. Sometimes they're itching to get off of this stretch. And if I don't think that they really got it yet, we keep it going. We'll go a third week. It just depends on where they're at. But what happens is they figure it out. They let the resistance go. They're able to get in the mirror, brush their teeth. Like, I don't know, I do an exercise when I brush my teeth. Like, I actually connect. It's connecting into like the energy, the spirit behind me. It's a great way to get reconnected to who I am. When I do that, when I brush my teeth or anytime I'm in a mirror, they start doing that. They connect with themselves, or they start sitting at dinner and just being present, and the stress starts to go down. They start to see their kids differently. Their kids start to actually act differently because they didn't even say anything differently to their kids. They're different. Their presence, their energy, it's open, expanded, powerful. People around them start acting differently as well. It's a powerful ripple effect that happens in their life. So yeah, that's the thing that you brought up.
Yeah, no, oh my goodness, there were so many points that you included in in answering that question. And so I think the part that came through for me the loudest was becoming so consciously aware of the life we're living in every moment, that we are creating the life that we are living with every single choice that we make, and that the life that we'll look back at one day is made up of those small choices that we made every single day. But if we're so awake to ourselves and the life that we're creating in every moment, we can create the life of our dreams, because with every single choice, we pause, we reflect, and we think consciously about our next action or how we're feeling in that moment, and then correcting slightly with that next choice. So when I wake up in the morning, number one, I'm grateful for like every morning that I wake up because I have another day to live. But then I go through all of the different, and oftentimes my morning is made up of a whole bunch of small joys. And one of those joys for me is waking up and having my coffee. That I'll go into the pantry and I'll start my coffee, and I go to sleep so excited to have my coffee the next day. And that when I have and I make it and I sip it, that first sip, and I'm just like, oh, it tastes so good. This is so good. And then it's like I've started my day off on that foot. And then I think about, okay, what is the next thing that's going to make me feel happy? What outfit today is going to make me feel good about myself? How do I need to style my hair? And it's every single choice we make, we are technically choosing our joy, because we usually have maybe just two choices to make. That if you're feeling hungry, you're going to choose, am I going to have eggs or am I going to have oatmeal today? And we're going to choose what we think is going to make us feel a little happier in that choice. When we go to a restaurant, we look at everything going to make you happy. So every single way we're making, we are creating the life of our dreams. But when people are zoned out and multitasking and using substances or participating in activities that actually make them live life on autopilot as if they're not there, then you're looking back at your life and saying, just as like how we look back on Friday and say, where did the week go? It's because we're not present. We're not present enough. And to understand that when you said responsibility is us responsible for our life, that we are literally creating our life in every moment. That when you hear, if you're watching the news and you don't like how it's making you feel, you don't have to sit there and continue to listen to it. You can turn it off. Or
Yeah.
you're in the presence of people who, they're talking about things that are making you feel like angry and upset, politics or religion or all the different issues that often divide many of us, that we have a choice to say, you know what, I really need to go. Sorry, I have an appointment. Sorry, I have a call that I have to make. That you don't have to continue to be in the presence of individuals or be in spaces that are making you feel uncomfortable. But we have to be so present. And so that exercise, what I loved about it is that, we've been conditioned to believe that multitasking is the right thing. And I remember when they introduced this idea of doing 10 things at once.
Sure.
And that, now kids they could be on an iPad. It's very interesting. And they have a view where they're technically watching two things at once, but the two things that they're watching are contrasting, like videos. That one is, like an arts and craft, and the other one is totally something contrary to that. And there they are trying to never mind just watching a video, now watching a video that has two different contrasting activities on it. And that's taking their attention, and maybe it's taking their attention away from like their homework and their chores or other things that they should be doing, because they're now so self-absorbed in that. But there are so many things that are pulling us away our attention all the time. And so I think, as you said, people struggle with having to scale all of that back, because for years we've been trying to do more than one thing at once to be efficient. And I think what's interesting is that AI is actually doing that to us to an even greater degree, because technically we have been trying to create machines from, let's say, the beginning of time that are aimed to make our life easier and more efficient, right? Washing machines, dishwashers, computers, all the different things. And now AI is technically making our tasks even quicker, because now it can help us to write emails. It can help us to do things that might have taken us longer to do before. But what do we do with that free time? And I was having a discussion with the creator of some AI software that I use for research. And he said that you think that as we continue to create machines that are supposed to make our lives easier and to give us more free time, like self-driving cars, right? That, if now you're not driving, you could sit in the back and have a nap that you need. No, we'd be sitting in the back with our phones, like when I'm in an Uber and I'm like, oh, great, now I have time to answer all these emails, because, I'm not at my desk, but I can do them here in the car. So we don't actually become more present when we have more time. We actually fill in all of that extra time with more things to do. How do we accomplish more? How do we do more instead of being super, super present? And I think that if we're awake to what you said, that we are literally creating the life that we're living with every single choice that we make, every single moment, we'll understand the truth in that statement, that we are responsible for the life that we're living, because we are choosing moment by moment what if you do it consciously, what is giving you that little bit of joy with every single choice.
Man, you said some great things there. Can I add a little bit to that?
just quickly. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I think the context that we're living in is a lot of it, because you're right. Like, to your point, we have been conditioned. There's people debate with each other about who's busier. It's fascinating to watch someone say I'm busy, and then someone else, oh, I'm busy too. Oh man, and there's like this ego battle about who's busier, and it's like, that's a context that you're living in for your life. So yeah, when you take the AI tool and you freed up your time from that context, you're going to add, because you think the mission is to be busy. And I don't. I don't want to be busy. People tell me like, I know you're busy. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Stop putting that on me. I'm not busy. I'm productive. And
Mhm.
like for me, I'm going to do more when I'm operating from the vision. Like the vision, when my vision dictates the way that I show up, like the actions I take and who I'm being, I'm okay with doing more. I'm okay
Mhm.
with working nights, or I'm okay with working the weekend, but not from a place of busyness, from a
Mhm.
place of vision. I'm so excited about what I'm bringing to life that I'm going to work or be productive to bring this to life, but not for the sake of being busy. And it's like just two completely different contexts to live from, both of
Mhm.
which you can still have a full plate.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Shawn, I would love for you to share a little bit more about how people can get in touch with you after the show.
Yes, perfect. I do things a little untraditional. I built my business in a way, not a normal way that people build. So I am not very active on social media. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook, but I post mostly about my personal life in those ways, just mostly on my stories. Probably the best way to get in touch with me. I gave your team a link as a gift for people who are watching. I did a uh, training called Manifest Anything, and it's really 4 steps to manifest anything that you want. So if your listeners want to learn more about me or connect with me, just click that link and get that free training. By doing that, you'll get instant access to the training. It's a 90-minute training that I did. They can watch on demand, and then they get access to the writing that I do. I write something around this context that we're talking about: leadership, vision, purpose, fulfillment, that kind of thing. I write every single day. It's something that opened up when I found a spiritual practice in Peru back in 2007, and this download hasn't stopped. So I share every day to help people transform their life. If they just follow what I say in the emails, I've had people tell me that they've gone from single to finding their dream partner to getting married, uh,
Mhm.
just from reading what I share with. So tune in with me that way. That would be the best way.
Yeah. Do you have a website?
Nope, I don't.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I
Yeah. So
don't.
they have to click on this link.
I have probably 200 landing pages from different events and trainings that I do, but I haven't built a website yet. I've gone a completely different route in building this business.
Mm.
My previous business, I went that website, social media. This time I said, you know what, the thing that works the best for me is building an email list. And I built an email list,
Mm.
and I talk to my email list all the time. And then I run different events and things like that. So that's the best way to find me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, click on the link, everybody. Shawn, thank
So,
you so much for being on the show today.
Teresa, it's my freaking pleasure. Grateful to spend time with you anytime that we can do it. So thank you so much for having me. Much appreciated.
Thank you.